هذا القرآن يوحدنا لطريق الخير يوجهنا الله تعالى أنزله ورسول الله معلمنا هذا القرآن يوحدنا لطريق الخير يوجهنا الله تعالى أنزله ورسول الله معلمنا
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, we'll continue our discussion about misconceptions about Sharia, or about the aims and objectives of Sharia. We were talking about the two extremes when looking at the aims and objectives of Sharia. And we said, on one hand, we have this extreme that they look at the bigger picture, the main principles, the main aims of a Sharia, and they ignore the individual adillah. On the other hand, the other extreme put more focus on the individual adillah, and they forget about the bigger aims and objectives of a Sharia. And I mentioned the example of al-Hudud and how people perceive, or how some people look at the issue of Hadd al-Ridda, or the capital punishment for apostasy. And then I mentioned the example which I attended myself, a discussion between some so-called طلاب العلم about Hadd al-Zani al-Muhsan. Okay? Hadd al-Zani al-Muhsan. And I told them that the story is in Sahih al-Bukhari, and there were two stories in Sahih al-Bukhari about Hadd al-Rajm. They said that, no, we understand that it is there, but we have to understand the spirit behind the Hadd. Because what was the aim of a Sharia is to kill that purpose and to cause kind of suffering for him, okay, or for her, or just to kill him in a way that might admonish the other people. Okay? So, can we separate between killing and the punishment? If we can separate between killing and punishment, and we see that this punishment can be replaced by another punishment that is more effective for the people according to their culture, okay, then we can punish this person and kill him. And the aim of a Sharia in this specific punishment will be achieved. Okay? So look how far people can go when they misuse these principles, or they misunderstand those principles. Okay? Nowadays, maybe you are aware that there is a lot of discussion about Hadd al-Ridda. What is for Hadd al-Ridda, brothers? As we mentioned, Hadd al-Ridda, because there is a lot of discussion. Those who go against Hadd al-Ridda, just before that, if someone, he doesn't like something, okay, or he tries to not to accept something, what does that mean? It means that in the back of his mind there is a yardstick that he is measuring those new issues according it. Yeah? Is that right or not? Once you say this is right or this is wrong, based on what? You have predefined principles at the back of your mind, and according to those principles, you are using those principles as the reference point. So you measure things according to this reference point, or according to this criteria, or according to this yardstick. So why to say that we have to look to consider Hadd al-Ridda? Why? It means that you have an assumption, a yardstick different from the yardstick that was given to you by Islam. Okay? And that yardstick normally is what? The Western value or the Western values. And this is the biggest problem. But who said that those Western values are even, forget about an Islamic point of view, but even for the West themselves? Who said that they are values for the West? The West themselves differ about those values. And even, we don't want to discuss that now, but even from a logical point of view, you can refute most of these values. Not from an Islamic point of view, but from a logical point of view. Okay? Anyway, we don't want to discuss that. So this extreme, brothers, they focus on the aims and objectives of Sharia and they ignore the individual adilla. Okay, another example, maybe a little bit far example. Now, maybe you know the fatwa given by the EFC, the European Council for the the European Council for Fatwa, okay, where they say that it is allowed for a woman who accepted Islam to stay under her husband, okay, who is not Muslim, who remained, okay, on his religion. And now, if you look at this, the justification of this fatwa, mainly, okay, because of the aims and objectives of Sharia. Actually, the main bahth that this fatwa was based on, which is the bahth of Al-Judayah, in the beginning of the bahth, he set those notions. He said, I looked at this mas'ala, and I looked at the maqaasid of al-Sharia, and the Sharia tries to spread love between people, and try to encourage people to tighten the kinship and the relationship between them, and silat al-rahim, etc. So he said, and also I found that the Sharia is keen to preserve the family and the family values, and not to destroy families, and to keep the children within the family values, and also to bring the children with mom and dad. So I looked at those maqaasid, and I looked at this notion, and this is what he is saying, the translation of what he said, and I looked at this notion that many people think that there is ijma' on, okay, which is when a woman accepted Islam under her husband, and her husband remains on his religion. I looked at it, and I looked at the separation between them after she accepted Islam, and whether that fits with the maqaasid of al-Sharia, and I found that this is against the aims and objectives of Islam. So I said that it is impossible that al-Sharia commands us to do something like this, commands us to separate between a husband and wife just because the wife accepted al-Islam and the husband chosen to remain on his religion. Okay? And therefore, I looked at this mas'ala, I considered it, I found that there is no ijma', and actually I found that the adilla are against that. And then he completely ignored that so many scholars quoted al-ijma' on this mas'ala. He completely ignored the interpretation of وَلَنْ يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ سَبِيلًا. He completely ignored the interpretation of لَا هُنَّ حِلٌّ لَهُمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحِلُّونَ لَهُنْ. He completely ignored the interpretation of those ayat that are talking about this specific ruling. He ignored completely the ruling of Zainab ibn al-As, etc., and the other mu'minat. When they accepted Islam, they were separated from their husbands. And when he claims that some, of course we don't want to discuss this in details, okay, he, even when some of those stories that we're talking about, like the story of Zainab, the story of Habiba Ramla and others, he claims that those stories are weak.